Well, the final evolution of the giant gun. I knew it was coming, but I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think it existed. After the last time their giant gun accidentally killed a god, I didn't want to believe it. But there it is. An attack moon. I stood at the viewing port of the station, orbiting their now fully functioning prototype, a medium-sized moon, its front end with a giant goddamn cannon on the front. I took a deep breath and looked at the engineer who designed it. Well, I guess it was inevitable then. So, what does this one do? Mobile Intelligent Stellar Ignition Unit, MISIU. It can destroy a planet, but we'd rather find failed stars and use it to restart them, he said. This caught me off guard, and I looked at him surprised. Wait, it's not a giant death machine? Well, it is, but we'd rather use it for more creative purposes. There's thousands of systems around that have brown dwarfs or failed gas giants that have their own subsystems. By using this to ignite the fusion processes in these failed stars, we can make terraforming these planets and moons a lot easier, he replied with a smile. Oh, thank the gods, I tried to say. It can shatter a planet in half or blow away a gas giant atmosphere or cause a supernova. And also maybe harvest matter from a neutron star too, but we don't really want to, so it won't, he said. I screamed, slamming my head into the window. He just looked at me in confusion. Yeah, anyway. It uses a miniature wormhole as a power source and the shields— You did what with a wormhole? I yelled out in terror, staring at him. You don't have one? We create a small black hole using a matter collider, then use a special machine we use to turn it into a wormhole. Then we build a ship around it. The wormhole is calibrated juiced, so we can effectively use it as a supply depot, as well as the ship's power plant. Even so, the planet itself has farms, factories, and everything else. It's fully self-sustaining, he simply said. You are talking to me like the entire galaxy can capture black holes and turn them into giant guns at will. The galaxy isn't as crazy as you are you. My translator began to censor a large number of expletives and slurs. The human just looked at me with a smirk as I ranted at him. In between the massive amount of slurs, I managed to get in a few statements that actually made sense. I explained, sort of, how humans were insane for their obsession with big things. I explained how massive waveform reality-shattering railguns were an extremely uncommon occurrence. I explained how the galaxy did not have giant moving moon-based cannon ships. I explained, with a large amount of swearing, how humans were so far above the galaxy's level it was honestly disgusting. I finished my rant and stared at him. How do you justify anything you do? This isn't about an obsession with enormous weaponry. What the hell are you doing? What do you mean? We're just doing what we've always done. Longer, farther, faster. That's basically our entire history, he simply said, still smirking. I took a deep breath. Okay. May I please, on behalf of all sentient life in the galaxy, please ask you humans to do one thing for us? Sure? Please don't build a giant gun that will destroy the universe, I yelled out, my voice now becoming strained from my screeching. He looked at the ground sheepishly and rubbed the back of his neck with a hand. I guess I'll tell the Mars boys to stop building that quantum accelerator railgun then. I yelled and spat more expletives and slurs along with more breathless explanations of why humans are so insane. I gathered my breath after a solid hour of ranting at them all, a crowd of humans gathering around me as I detailed word for word as to why everyone was so irritated at them. I explained how the warrior caste of the Shakandi were so terrified of humans and their gun obsession that they nearly became Buddhist pacifists. I yelled at them all, explaining how the galaxy has repeatedly come to the conclusion the species needs to be censured or sanctioned, only for us all to do a double take and think it's a bad idea as humans test fire giant gun number 384. Between expletives, curses, prayers to my gods, If humans had not already killed them anyway, we aren't sure, and racial slurs, I was rapidly running out of breath and developing a migraine. But I soldiered on and continued to explain why the galaxy was so terrifying and how we were concerned they might do something drastic or even crazier and end up all exploding or something. At the end of my rant, one human shyly raised a hand in question. "Yes," I responded. "So, does that mean we need to stop building the star cannon thingy?" he asked. Everyone looked at him, shushing him angrily. I took a deep breath. What? Everyone tried to look away like they knew they were in trouble, doing that all-too-human thing when they look at the floor, rubbing the back of the neck. Well, you turned a star into a giant gun?" I yelled. "Well, not really. We kinda accidentally turned a gas giant into a neutron star and thought, well, I have an idea, and tried to harvest the neutron star for materials and kinda opened up a wormhole. One thing led to another, and we kinda built that. Then we thought, I can make it bigger, I guess, and, well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not surprised, to be honest with you. Fucking creatures have this strange power to distort reality if you have a big enough cannon, but it still doesn't make any sense. What next? Ships shaped like giant guns being used by giant robots?" I yelled at them. They all looked at each other in that way and shuffled closer to the blinds, closing them just as I saw the silhouette of a giant ship in the shape of a human gun called the AK-47. No? Ah! I slammed my head into the wall again, slinging curses and slurs as I did. I looked up at the ceiling. I prayed to the gods. So, dear gods, are you guys still laughing? Are you still laughing? I screamed. So, they all looked at me. Does that mean you don't want to test fire it then? I just took a deep breath and cradled my aching head. I held out my hand. Just give me that damn button. The humans did what with a giant gun? The council was in talks as usual. I had to take a break from ambassadorial work with the Terrans and start working in a more calming and controlled atmosphere. I smiled to myself as a slur was thrown about, causing an uproar. A huge groan of anger and resentment suddenly overcame the room as a Terranian and Olivarchian stabbed each other with word swords and angry remarks, a delightful, petty dispute on mining rights on a border world. I breathed a deep sigh of relief and sank into my seat. The ambassador from the Zarin delegation next door noticed and asked me what I was so calm about. "Oh, it's nothing. It's good to get back to basics. Petty squabbles, childish bullying, silly conflicts. It never goes anywhere. It's just so relaxing," I said proudly. "You find this idiotic nonsense relaxing. We're on the brink of war for the umpteenth time, and you're relaxed?" His mandibles clicked in confusion. "Oh, yes. Trust me, compared to dealing with humans, this is a spa vacation. Humans and their ridiculous weaponry gave us all constant headaches." I sat back in my chair and laughed at yet another racial slur. The back and forth continued as it usually did for a few more minutes. I just sat and basked in the relaxed atmosphere of political debate. A strange noise came from behind me. The door opened, and the room was suddenly overcome by the horrible, desperate, despair-filled wailing of a Shikandi hive prince. A horrid blue goop flowed like rivers from his 6 eyes as his crabby form stumbled into my delegation pod and handed me a data pad. He gobbled and gabbled, barely attempting to snort out a coherent statement from his crying face as he just slumped into the corner and resumed his despair. The chamber just looked on expectantly and stared at me, waiting as the Shikandi began using his head as a hammer against the wall. "How high did they do it?" was all I could manage to understand from his horrendous wailing. I read the report on the datapad. As I read through each line, my skin tone went from a deep ocean blue to an almost pale snow white. I sank back into my seat and panic began to set in. My hands started shaking, so violently shaking that I couldn't read and had to stop for a few moments. I stood up from my seat and tried to calm down, wrapping my arms around myself to try to stop the shaking. The entire time this was happening, the council was at the edge of their seats, staring at me and trying to figure out what horror story I was reading. I sat back down, having regained my composure, but not my skin pigments, and resumed reading. I finished and was slightly relieved at the outcome, but not so much its implication. I had stopped shaking, but I was still white with shock. I looked at my now pale arm and squealed in panic for a minute as I lost the beautiful blue. I had literally had the color in my skin shocked out of me. I stood up and moved our podium into the speaker's corner, shoving the previous delegate out of it, and began to read the datapad aloud. To the Shakandi Hive Queen, from the Terran Union. This letter is to inform you that we have conducted a test with an experimental weapon codenamed Scion. The test firing of this experimental weapon has produced some interesting results, to say the least. Firstly, the information we gained confirmed the existence of gods and the astral plane. Who'da thunk it, eh? Secondly, the weapons test confirmed that the fabric of reality is slightly more permeable than initially expected, and gods can in fact be harmed by mortal weapons given enough encouragement. Therefore, we are afraid we have some bad news. We have, through various experiments and a few seances, confirmed the existence of the Shakandi god known as the Great Devourer. We regret to inform you, however, our weapons test was unfortunately a lot more potent than expected, and the Great Devourer was accidentally destroyed, killed, annihilated during the test. Yes, you did read that correctly. We accidentally killed your god. Emphasis on accidentally. We had a minor miscalculation in our test weapons power and well, the results speak for themselves. We sincerely apologize and hope that this event does not affect any future relations with your empire. We are fully committed to repairing any damage caused by this mistake in judgment, and will listen to any requests you have to mend the damage we have done. First step in this process is, of course, to dismantle the weapon in question and cease all research efforts into that kind of technology. This has, of course, already been done. We will be looking forward to any notices from your people in the coming days. With love, the Terran Union of Systems, P.S. Please do enjoy the basket of goodies we sent you as an apology. Many more to come. P.P.S. Oops. I finished reading the page aloud and noticed the Shakandi prince had stopped blubbering and was now half crying, half laughing as he devoured a small fabric fiber basket of foodstuffs. Diff if goob. Diff if very goob, he said between mouthfuls and sobs. I sat back down in my seat and allowed a solid hour of deafening silence to follow my reading. Jaws were on the floor. Paw pads were now soaked in sweat. Carapaces were showing microfractures from stress. Stretch marks were appearing on skins. For a solid damn hour, the room lay deathly silent, permeated only by the sobs and scrunching noises from a depressed hive prince. Finally, someone broke the silence. What do we do now? Nothing. We do nothing. There is nothing we can do, could do, or would do. They just killed a god? What can we do? Another councilman angrily responded. Quiet! I bellowed angrily. Dear delegates, there is no need for panic. I know my appearance denotes otherwise, but I assure you, there is no need to panic. It says so right here. I attached the datapad with the letter to council chambers and highlighted a particular passage. First step in this process is, of course, to dismantle the weapon in question and cease all research efforts into that kind of technology. This has, of course, already been done. The humans are absolutely batshit dual-alley insane, but they aren't stupid. They know how bad they did, and they dismantled their giant god-killing gun and won't do it again. We have nothing to worry about, I assure you, I said. I allowed my message to sink in and sat back in my seat with a smile. My demeanor change seemed to calm everyone down, and within a few hours we were back to our own petty squabbles. I messaged the Terran ambassador and asked if he did indeed dismantle the God-Killer cannon. He said yes, and all documentation has been shelved for now. I let out a loud squeal of terror and passed out as I read the words, "But it's okay. We already have an attack moon being built. It's a lot more stable."